On a clear and sunny morning on November 11, 1942, the Dutch Oil Tanker Ondina and her escort, the British Indian minesweeper HMIS Bengal, were crossing the Indian Ocean from mainland Australia to the Cocos Islands when they suddenly spotted two incoming ships at a distance. Ondina was an old lumbering vessel that could barely manage 12 knots, so the convoy was moving at sluggish speeds and unprepared to face enemy resistance. The two incoming ships appeared to be aircraft carriers, but the crew couldn't be sure. The captain of HMIS Bengal then anxiously went through his records, but there were no reports of any Allied activity in the area, and he wondered if they could be Japanese ships. Both vessels then sounded their alarms and immediately veered 90 degrees to starboard while fleeing from the unidentified vessels. Still, their low speed crippled their escape. As they realized that sailing away would be fruitless, Bengal signaled Ondina to continue her course, and then turned back and headed straight towards the incoming vessels. The captain wanted to buy as much time as possible so Ondina could escape. Soon, HMIS Bengal identified the assaulting ships as armored Japanese auxiliary cruisers, and the crew knew that their chances of surviving the encounter were slim. As Ondina sailed for a few minutes, her captain realized that they would never outrun the Japanese vessels at their current maximum speed. Then he did the unthinkable and turned the oil tanker around and accelerated towards the Japanese. If escape was not an option, Ondina would help Bengal fight off the Japanese raiders. Japanese auxiliary cruisers. In contrast to Germany, the Japanese did not initially recognize the strategic necessity of disrupting Allied supply lines. But by 1942, they became concerned about the Allied tankers that transported costly oil products from the Middle East to Australia without resistance. Japan then requisitioned 14 passenger freighters and converted them into auxiliary cruisers to serve as raiders in the Indian Sea to address the issue. Two of the passenger cruisers to be converted were Ikoku Maru and Hokoku Maru. The 10,437-ton vessels were granted 4 15-centimeter, 2 8-centimeter, and 4 2.5-centimeter guns, 2 double torpedo tubes, and 2 Kawanishi E-7K Type 94 floatplanes. Furthermore, the ships were equipped with 2 12-cylinder Mitsubishi Burmeister & Wain diesel engines of 13,000 shaft horsepower, enabling a top speed of 21 knots. Later, in February of 1942, the Ikoku Maru and the Hokoku Maru replaced their 4 old 15-centimeter guns, which dated back to the Russian-Japanese War in 1905, for 8 modern 14-centimeter guns at the Kure Navy Yard in Japan. Additionally, the 2 Kawanishi amphibian aircraft were replaced by 2 faster Mitsubishi F-1M Type 0 floatplanes. Despite initially being passenger cruisers, the Ikoku Maru and Hokoku Maru were transformed into efficient and modern warships, more than capable of hunting down oil tankers and their escorts across the Indian Ocean. Ondina and HMIS Bengal. Ondina was a modern Dutch tanker commissioned by petroleum company La Corona, a sister company to Shell Oil. The tanker had an overall length of 142 yards and a standard displacement of 6,341 tons. It was powered by a 6-cylinder Werkspoor diesel engine with a modest power supply of 2,800 shaft horsepower, which allowed no more than 12 knots of speed. Due to the hazards stemming from World War II, tankers were equipped with a gun and some anti-aircraft machine guns, and Ondina was supplied with an American 10.2-centimeter gun positioned on the poop deck. Still, Ondina was a slow and vulnerable ship, and her light armament would only provide the most basic defense and was not meant to be used in large-scale battles against proper warships. This is why Ondina needed to be escorted for most of the trip's distance. After sailing from Australia, Ondina would be protected by the new Bathurst-class corvette HMIS Bengal, which was destined for the British Indian Navy. During the war, 60 Bathurst-class corvettes were built after an Australian design. 4 of these corvettes, also called Minesweepers because of their equipment, had been constructed under the Commonwealth Shipbuilding Program to serve for the Indian Navy. The Minesweepers were fitted with a triple expansion steam engine which supplied 2,000 shaft horsepower. The maximum speed of the corvettes was designed to be 15 knots, but because of the larger displacement, most of them struggled to go faster than 13 knots. As for weapons, HMIS Bengal was equipped with a 7.6-centimeter gun that had replaced 10.2-centimeter guns that were no longer available. In addition, the ship was also armored with 40mm Bofors cannons and 2 20mm Oerlikon machine guns as anti-aircraft weapons. The versatile Minesweeper was also fitted with a Type 38 Aztec device and 40 depth charges to conduct anti-submarine operations. As Bengal's tanks could only carry 186 tons of heavy liquid fuel, she could not reach India from the Australian mainland without stopping to recharge. but by sailing along with the Dutch tanker, Ondina had an escort for part of the trip, and HMIS Bengal could secure fuel. The encounter. On November 11th, 1942, while on a journey from Fremantle, Australia, to the Cocos Islands off the coast of Malaysia, the tanker MS Ondina spotted two mysterious vessels to the northeast, bearing down on her and her escort, HMIS Bengal. Ondina's captain, Willem Horsman, notified Captain William Joseph Wilson of the Bengal, and both officers checked their intelligence. However, there were no other Allied ships reported in the area, and they presumed that the two unidentified ships were Japanese. Ondina hurriedly maneuvered away to escape, but Bengal turned back towards the threat and rushed straight for the larger Ikoku Maru, hoping to buy enough time for the lumbering tanker to escape. As Ondina fled, Horsman realized that the two advancing raiders were considerably faster. Even if Bengal could buy her some time, the two ships would eventually catch up to her. It did not matter if the tanker was not fit for battle. The two ships would have a better chance of survival if they fought together. Ondina then turned back, and instead of escaping, the captain chose to fight and support their guardian. The Japanese struck first, landing several hits on Ondina, with her empty tank taking the hits. Fortunately, tankers were built with closed watertight partitions and could withstand considerable damage without significant concerns. It was Ondina and Bengal's turn to counterattack. Both ships fired at the same time, scoring direct hits on the hull and the frame of Hokoku Maru. A lucky shot also rang through the ship's structure, landing inside the armory and causing a series of explosions that completely destabilized the Japanese raider. She then began to sink moments later. It is highly debated if it was a shot by Ondina or Bengal that hurled the Hokoku Maru down into the lowest pits of the Indian Ocean, but their concentrated efforts certainly gave them the early advantage. However, there was another enemy ship still standing. 1-1. While her sister sank, the Ikoku Maru continued firing, concentrating almost entirely on Ondina, who had by now taken several major hits and was visibly damaged. HMIS Bengal rushed to her rescue, unleashing fire on the much larger raider until her ammunition stores ran dry. After she shot her last shell, she attempted a last desperate move to draw the attention of the Japanese vessel. Still, it was futile, and Ondina continued to receive the onslaught. Without ammunition, and believing the tanker was done for, Captain Wilson made a conscious decision to save his sailors and turned Bengal around, sailing away from the confrontation to Diego Garcia. The Ikoku Maru persisted in shelling the lone Ondina, and the tanker discharged her last 8 rounds at the raider. Unfortunately, she missed, and attempted to escape using smoke signals, which proved ineffective. Out of options, and with no help on the way, Captain Horsman gave the order to abandon the ship. However, as luck would have it, he was hit by stray shrapnel from a shell that struck near the bridge before he could escape. Lifeboats were lowered amid the fire and utter chaos, and the sailors abandoned the ship. The Japanese raider then fired 2 more torpedoes, both of which crashed into the tanker. However, they did minimal damage. The Ikoku Maru then concentrated machine gun fire at the fleeing lifeboats, taking the life of a sailor and seriously wounding 3 others. Believing the tanker was about to sink, she then disengaged and began rescuing the survivors of her sunken sister ship, managing to save 278 men out of 354. She then fired 1 last torpedo at the defenseless tanker and cruised away. The torpedo missed, and Ondina miraculously stayed afloat. Injured and confused, the surviving crew made their way back to the ship, which was now little more than a decaying shell. They then restored her to minimal working order. Fires were doused, engines checked, and she astonishingly sailed back to Fremantle after an epic and legendary encounter. Thank you for watching our video. Do you think HMIS Bengal did the right thing by leaving? Let us know in the comment section below. And for more thrilling history-inspired stories, don't forget to subscribe to all of our Dark Documentaries channels. Stay tuned.